Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this Family Building Society podcast series about expat mortgages. In our previous session, we provided a quick whistle-stop tour of key trends in the market, and in this session, we're going to dig a little bit deeper into the expat buy-to-let market specifically. Demand for this area of the market remains strong, with some expat-focused brokers reporting that around half of their inquiries this year are for buy-to-let investments, and there's more of a focus on regional markets outside of London. However, challenges still remain sometimes around pricing, fees and refinancing, and legislation like the Renters' Rights Act, are another key issue that brokers need to navigate. I'm Anna Sagar, Deputy Editor for Mortgage Solutions, and I'm joined by Paul Roberts, Senior Account Director for Yorkshire and Lancashire at Family Building Society, and Nathan Waller, Business Development Manager for East Anglia at Family Building Society. So welcome both. So I will kick off with we've touched on this briefly in the previous video and about and it was that both residential and buy-to-let expat business is on the rise, but I suppose specifically looking at expat buy-to-let, are you seeing a lot more inquiries for this kind of business, and what do you think the factors are behind that?
Absolutely, it's a very strong area of business for the society, and we're seeing an ever increasing number of inquiries for it. I suppose that segues me, Anna, into saying not only have we been doing expat buy-to-let standard, which is obviously covers your consumer buy-to-let clients and things, but we've actually moved into the limited company expat space as well, to just further broaden this product spectrum for those clients. Because as we talked about previously, many have moved over to another country. They've perhaps taken their existing residence onto an expat buy-to-let, and now some of them are considering expanding their portfolios. And as we know with UK buy-to-let, more and more of that now is moved down the limited company route.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've heard that the limit, anecdotally from brokers that demand for limited company buy-to-let especially is growing because it adds a bit more flexibility for customers. Would you say that's fair?
It just expands what they can do. Some will choose to keep it in their own private name. Some will move it into a limited company name.
And Nathan, just to kind of build on what Paul said about expat buy-to-let, is this an area of business that you're seeing a lot more inquiries for? And, what do you think are the factors behind it?
Yes, it certainly has seen a big increase. As alluded to in the previous video, we're beginning to see more and more customers that are moving abroad earlier in their lives, either for work or just for might be slightly cheaper to live in a different country, and they can still work remotely from there via the joys of the internet. And what to do is maybe not necessarily sell up and get rid of everything. They might want to keep an asset in the UK, which predominantly would have been the home that they were in when they were living here, and refinancing that, putting it onto a buy-to-let, earning some additional income from it, and doing it that way. Maybe they've got a little concern in the back of their head that it's a big decision to move to a whole different country, especially if you're going to do it properly and that's your intention, is you're going to live there forever, rather than it necessarily be like a 2 or 3 year window where you're moving with just your employer to head up a new office. It might be, well, no, we're going to move here and that's where we're going to stay. And they might just want that extra little safety net of going, just in case, I'm going to keep that and I'm going to rent it out, because if it all does go horribly wrong, then guess what? I can sell everything up from abroad, come back, pay the mortgage off, and we've got somewhere to live like straight away. So there's that extra safety net. They might even need to be looking to buy abroad. We see that on a regular occasion where they're refinancing their property in the UK, freeing the equity out to buy a residence abroad as well. So we're seeing an increased trend in that as well. And a whole kind of bit of everything, of lots of different scenarios. Same as if you're a UK customer moving around in the UK, you could be moving from one place to the other, and it's just exactly the same thing, but just on a wider scale, like a little bit further, jumping on a plane rather than jumping on a train to go to wherever you're going.
I think it's interesting that it's kind of like there's lots of different areas of the market that are on the rise in this specific segment. I suppose, when you guys obviously launched the limited company product, but is there demand for other areas of the buy-to-let market? I'm thinking like HMOs, or kind of, are they, growing their portfolios and things like that? I'll go to Paul first to kind of dig into that a bit more.
Absolutely, Anna. You know, as people become more settled into being a landlord, and you obviously have so many that have become, I suppose, accidental landlords in many ways with consumer buy-to-let. But people are looking at the market and thinking, actually, not necessarily a bad time to buy in their opinion, and looking at what they got. And then they're looking at, well, actually, what's going to help drive me the most income in terms of in doing that. And so it might be that they look at a multi-unit freehold block. They might look at a HMO, mid-sized, small-sized, etc. Students, for argument's sake, some of them may consider doing that. So it's, I think, trying to have as many strings to your bow as possible, and looking at the marketplace rather than just thinking, oh, I'll just go and buy that one bed end of terrace property in London and spend a small fortune on it. People are also looking outside their own natural area. So, I see a lot of southern clients effectively looking at the north of England with envious eyes. The rental yields on properties in the north of England can quite often outstrip what you get as a return in terms of the south of England. So, again, somebody's moved abroad, they've decided they were living in Epsom, for argument's sake, but actually looking at Blackburn as a place to buy a buy-to-let.
That's really interesting that, maybe they started off the process just being like, oh, I'll just I'll just keep, the flat that I had, I'll just make that into a buy to let, or I'll maybe buy a property so that I have somewhere that I can rent out and then have it as a butthole. But then they're actually then switch their strategy to become a portfolio landlord. So it's almost like if you're a broker, then actually a customer may come in and say, actually, I've got this one property that I want. And then but that could beget more. Would you say, is that something that you see quite a lot of?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you look at Dubai as a classic example, or Saudi, where low tax environments or zero tax environments, what do you do with your income? You've got surplus income that you may well have had over here. So it may well be that they decide, and often decide, to go into property rather than necessarily putting it into a pension or an investment. That's their way of thinking, right, this is what I'm going to use for my retirement. And the benefits of those low tax economies are there to see, aren't they?
Nathan, do you have anything to add to that? What are you seeing from kind of expat cases coming across your desk?
Yep. Same type of thing. And again, kind of as we alluded to previously, is the expat market, we're kind of badging up because it's a UK passport holder that is living abroad, but it's a very similar market to just a UK landlord. It's just they are a little bit further away. So they're looking at diversifying their portfolios. They look at future planning. They're looking at the best yield and the best bang for their buck, and they can look at their portfolio as a multitude of different streams of income. And generally speaking, most expats are relatively financially savvy as well. They potentially moved abroad for good prospects and incomes, for example, or they've done very, very well in the past and retired abroad with, again, usually relatively good incomes and prospects. So they normally know what they're doing, and they get an idea of what they're looking for, and then they go for it. And similar to everything that's happening in the standard UK market, the buy-to-let area is becoming more professional because it's having to be, and that's driving customers to look at, again, best return or best bang for their buck and making good financial decisions on their investments.
And you mentioned that, the professionalizing of the market kind of out of necessity. And I think that segues quite nicely into, there is heightened legislation now with the Renters' Rights Act and other things coming down the track like EPC reform, and, just the buy-to-let landscape is becoming more complex. Is that kind of looking ahead? Do you think that the demand for expat buy-to-let will continue given that kind of, heightened regulation and a bit more hoops to jump through?
It's going to continue to grow. You're still going to have those that, especially from an expat who know the UK market as well, that they do understand how houses are bought, sold, what they can do in the UK. They understand it. Sometimes if you go abroad and try and become a landlord in a completely different country, then all of a sudden it gets a little bit concerning, a little bit worrying. They're not quite sure what they're doing. Again, it is filtering out the kind of ad hoc ones. So yes, you might see a drop in those that are just giving it a go and seeing what happens. But what you'll tend to find is those that are dropping there and giving it a go are going to be replaced with those that are already there and already understand it. That's, again, another reason why we've looked into the limited company for expats, is that's where the market is shifting for UK customers. That's where we believe that the market for the expat market is going to go. They may not have the same tax implications because they are living abroad, but there might be other implications of what they're thinking of, either passing their portfolio down to sons, daughters, family. It might be, well, our intention is to be abroad for 10 or 15 years and then come back, at which point then they will have to worry about the tax implications of where their portfolio is held. So actually it's future planning. So I think generally speaking, yes, the market is becoming that little bit trickier and that little bit more tighter, but for good reason. There are a lot of rogue landlords out there, and hopefully that's going to get rid of those and give better quality housing for the tenants and giving them a bit more comfort and security, which isn't a bad thing. But that will kind of push the landlords into being that little bit more professional, which again, kind of lends itself quite nicely to those types of expat clients that are generally professional people as well.
Paul, do you have anything to add to that? Do you think the expat buy-to-let market is, set to, it's going to continue its growth trajectory? That's quite a hard word to say.
Absolutely. I can only go on what I'm seeing at this moment in time, Anna, and yes, renters' rights bill has just gone through, etc., but it doesn't seem to have put off, and in particular doesn't seem to have put off the larger landlords. Now, and when I say larger landlords, just the portfolio landlords, those with 4 or more inquiries coming in from what I might describe as my expat specialists, isn't shrinking. And if anything, it's gone up because of our introduction of limited company expat.
Obviously, talking about that limited company product, is there any other aspects of what's the reception? One, what has the reception of that limited company product been like? And are there, other aspects of the expat buy-to-let proposition that you guys want to shout about?
Certainly from my point of view, the stress testing on limited company, which is obviously a little bit lower than on personal buy-to-let, the big things that historically have gone well from our point of view is we just don't assess income on buy-to-lets. Something not having to produce 2 years accounts, 3 months pay slips, P60s, etc., does go down very well. Especially when you're looking at countries like Saudi, Dubai, etc., where you're then not having to worry about getting those documents translated, as Nathan was talking about. So not assessing income is a big one. And the other big one is we have no portfolio limits. The client can have as many as they want in the background. We just want them to be self-funding in the background, simple as that. And that, again, really, really helps us. And with the limited company, the changes that we made to the UK limited company buy-to-let in terms of our personal guarantees and floating charges, not having personal guarantees up to 65% loan to value and no longer needing the floating charges, again, makes that process simpler, more cost effective for the clients. And I certainly, the comments I'm getting back are very positive that we've made those moves.
Great. Nathan, do you have anything you want to add to that? Any particular features that about the proposition that you would want brokers to know?
I think Paul's covered it all really, really quite nicely there, to be fair. We've got a range of different products for a range of different scenarios to cover the vast majority of the types that a client may be looking for in the expat market. Better stress testing and having that ability to be able to place the case as well. And I think, again, that's the key point. We lend to a lot of different countries that are there, mainly Europe, the Gulf states, things, and no minimum income, no background stress on a portfolio as well, I think are very key points.
Well, that's a really good note to end on. And thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If you haven't seen our previous episode, which offers an overview of the expat market, there will be a link in the story. And our next session is going to be looking at the future of the expat market. So please tune in for that. So thank you so much, everybody.